Okay, welcome back from break, everyone. Welcome back to everyone online as well. This next talk is titled Enlightenment. What is enlightenment? And this is where I'm going to explain to you the enlightened mental state, because if you're going to go on a journey somewhere, you need to know where you're headed, and that's going to help you to navigate your way to it more readily. And then once you arrive, you'll know that you've arrived. It's the same thing if you were interested in going to Chiang Rai. Maybe some of your friends say, hey, would you like to go to Chiang Rai this weekend? And you're like, where's Chiang Rai? What is it like? What's there? What will we do when we get there? You'd like to know some information before you journey on this path to go to Chiang Rai. And then once you get to Chiang Rai, you'll know you're there because people described the various things that were there. So the same thing is true with enlightenment, is you're going to need to know a bit about it to navigate your way to it. And then you'll be able to more readily navigate your way to it. And you'll also be able to then know that you've arrived once you got to enlightenment itself. So the first thing to understand about this topic is that it's very challenging for the unenlightened mind to understand what enlightenment is. So I can explain it to you and we can talk about it, and you'll surely know more about it after our conversation than you do right now. But just understand that when we're done with our conversation, you're not going to understand 100% of what enlightenment is at the end of our conversation. It's kind of like, would you be able to fully understand what chocolate ice cream is if you never tasted chocolate ice cream? The answer is no. In order for you to fully understand what chocolate ice cream tastes like, you're going to need to taste it. And the same thing is true with enlightenment. In order for you to fully understand it, you're going to need to experience it. On your way to enlightenment, you will be experiencing improved qualities of mind, and you'll get some glimpses of enlightenment on your way. Because understand that enlightenment is not like a light switch. It's not like it's on or it's off. It's not like you snap your fingers and boom, you're enlightened. 1 minute ago, you weren't enlightened, and now 1 minute later, you are enlightened. That's not how enlightenment works. It's a gradual progression, and the qualities of enlightenment shine through more and more. If you think about the sun, and like there's these clouds that are kind of like in front of the sun, as the clouds start to peer away, the rays of the sun start shining through. You start seeing the brightness and the radiance of the sun start shining through. It's glaring through the clouds more and more. And it's the same thing as you're bringing down certain pollutions that are in your mind, the rays or the radiance and the brightness of the enlightened mind, the qualities of enlightenment start shining through just like the clouds. So I'm going to explain this to you and help you guys to best understand it as you can, as you would like to hear the various things that I share. As I share those things with you, you can ask any and all questions that you like about enlightenment, but just understand that you're not going to understand it 100% by the end of our conversation. Enlightenment is a mental state that you attain in this life, but it can also be attained at death as well. It's where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently for the rest of your life. You're not going to experience any more discontent feelings by the time you get to enlightenment. The mind is steady, it's concentrated, it's stable, it's unshakable. There's nothing that can shake up your mind when you're enlightened. It doesn't matter what it is. Nothing can shake you up. Instead, the mind's steady, calm, it's focused, it's concentrated, it's unshakable. The mind is relaxed and calm, but yet it's attentive and alert. Oftentimes we think about a calm and relaxed mind, we don't think about attentive and alert. There's going to be ambition, there's going to be motivation, encouragement in the mind. There's going to be energy and enthusiasm in the mind, right? It's not like you're dull and lethargic. That's living on one side. But you're also not chasing after things either. Your mind is in the middle. So this is a mental state that you can attain in this life. And having done so, you will escape what's referred to as the cycle of rebirth. This is something that I tend to share with students to kind of set aside when they're first starting to understand the teachings of the Buddha, like in a foundational program like this. But even the cycle of rebirth can be independently verified. So just understand that if you get to enlightenment, not only is your mind peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently, but you're no longer going to be reborn back into the world over and over and over again. And again, this can be independently verified, but what's happened in the past is in the past. What's in the future is in the future. It doesn't matter right now. But if you focus on the core central teachings of the Buddha, this is what's going to lead to your awakening, and you're going to see more and more pollution coming out of your mind and more of the qualities of enlightenment shining through. So this cycle of rebirth is something that's there and that you can understand. Usually students approach it maybe 1.5 years, 2 years into their development on the path to enlightenment, but just understand that the enlightened being is not going to be reborn into the world any longer. As I mentioned, this is attainable at death. You can attain this in the human realm and in the heavenly realm as well. But the goal would be to attain it in this life so that you never need to come back and experience rebirth over and over and over again. And you can experience the rest of your life with this peace and joy and calmness in the mind. And you'll be able to see that your mind has gotten to this mental state because you understand what it feels like to experience anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. And when those same situations are occurring and you're no longer experiencing these discontent feelings, you'll know that your mind is enlightened because it'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You haven't experienced any discontent feelings. And you'll know that it's from training your mind in these teachings. So it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that leads to this mental state. And what you're doing is you're eliminating what's called the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires or the 3 poisons: craving, anger, and ignorance. This is a high-level description of what's plaguing the unenlightened mind. Here in a moment, we're going to be talking about the 10 fetters. The 10 fetters are a detailed description of what the Buddha discovered in the unenlightened mind. These are the 10 pollutions or the defilements or the taints. And we describe these in a high level as the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires or the 3 poisons of craving, anger, and ignorance. And I'm going to be talking about this on Wednesday morning. I'm going to go into detail explaining what they are, what the symptoms of them are, and then the solutions of how to actually fix them. By the time you are getting to enlightenment, you're going to be practicing the 3 wholesome roots, which is generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, which are the exact opposites of craving, anger, and ignorance. While the enlightened mind is a mental state that you attain in this life through purification, through eliminating the pollutions of the mind. We might think about the path to enlightenment as a purification of the mind, that you're applying tools and techniques to purify the mind of these various pollutions. Some people refer to enlightenment as happiness or ultimate bliss. I tend to not refer to it this way, even though there's plenty of happiness in the enlightened mental state. But it's different than in the unenlightened mental state. In the unenlightened mental state, you're experiencing conditional happiness, meaning if some condition exists, I will be happy. So if it's sunny outside, you will be happy. If your bank account balance is this, then you'll be happy. If your mom or dad do this, you'll be happy. If your boss does this, you'll be happy. This is conditional happiness. This happiness arises, it changes, and it fades away. That's why it's ultimately displeasing. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you're experiencing unconditioned happiness. There doesn't need to be any condition met in order for the mind to be happy. It's just permanently happy. It's called unconditional happiness. It's a mental state versus the feeling of happiness. The feeling of happiness will arise, change, and fade away because it's based on some condition. That if you base your inner feelings of, I am so happy because it's sunny, well, now when the sun changes because of impermanence and it's raining, you'll be sad. You'll be frustrated. Or if you base your inner feelings on, I am so happy my bank account balance is this, then when it drops below that, you'll be sad because that bank account balance is impermanent. It can't permanently be at that level. So as soon as you base your inner feelings on some condition, it's an impermanent feeling. And this is why the mind in the unenlightened state can't experience permanent happiness. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, is because you're basing your inner feelings on some condition. And then when those conditions change, the mind ends up in the painful feelings. So by the time you get to enlightenment and you purify the mind, you're not experiencing this anymore. But when you're in the jhanas, which what a jhana is it's a preliminary phase that the mind goes through on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. These jhanas are experienced, the qualities of the jhanas are experienced at all times during your day. Sometimes people think that the jhanas are only experienced during meditation, but in reality, these are qualities that you're experiencing at all times during your day. What the word jhana means is it means meditative absorption or mental absorption. If it translated to just one English word, I would use that, but unfortunately it doesn't, so I still need to use the word jhana. It's a preliminary phase that the mind goes through, and there's 4 phases that the mind goes through. The Buddha explains them very clearly, and you can see if you train your mind in the Eightfold Path that your mind is moving through these jhanas. And this is where it gets really real for you, because you can look at teachings that the Buddha described 2,500 years ago, where he's describing that if you practice the Eightfold Path, your mind will experience these jhanas. And then you read it and you see that your mind is experiencing those exact things, and you know that this is true, that your mind is experiencing exactly what the Buddha talked about. So meditative absorption or mental absorption, what this means is that your mind has absorbed a certain amount of the teachings, a certain amount of the meditation. You've purified your mind to a certain degree. It's not fully purified in the jhanas, and you're still experiencing discontentedness. But there is some ultimate bliss when you get into that first jhana. Sometimes people get into that first jhana and it's like night and day compared to what you experience when you're off the path to enlightenment to when you're in this jhana. And therefore, there are some people who think they're enlightened and they're actually experiencing the jhanas. So this is where people will describe enlightenment as ultimate bliss. Or some people will say that an enlightened being still experiences anger or sadness or frustration. That's because they think that they're enlightened and they still experience sadness and irritation and annoyance and loneliness and boredom and things like this. So they're describing enlightenment as that, but their mind is not yet enlightened. They're still potentially in these jhanas. And your mind can actually regress backwards out of those jhanas too. And this is an unfortunate thing that some people might think that they're enlightened and they kind of like, all right, I'm done. And now their mind can regress out of those jhanas. So I don't describe enlightenment as ultimate bliss because this is really describing the jhanas. The enlightened mental state, what you'll experience is the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently. These are mental qualities that you experience at all times during your day, that you've purified your mind of the causes and conditions that are producing temporary feelings. The mind in the unenlightened state is going to experience temporary feelings. They're going to arise, they're going to change, and they're going to fade away. But in the enlightened mental state, you're not experiencing those things. You're experiencing the permanent mental states of peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy. They're mental qualities that they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. They're just always there. They're persistent. You'll notice that there's a high degree of focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. All these discontent feelings that I talk about are completely eliminated from the mind. Sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of these and others are eliminated. Even the slightest displeasure, the slightest ickiness is eliminated from the enlightened mind. You're not even in a bad mood anymore by the time you get to enlightenment. You'll notice that you have deep wisdom where you can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everybody around you. Right now, you might find that to be challenging. There might be certain people that you have a bit of bitterness towards, or hostility or aggression, or maybe dislike somebody that's around you. This is the mind having the pollution. But by the time you train your mind and you purify your mind, you'll have deep wisdom about the path to enlightenment, and you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everybody and anybody that you're around. Your mind won't be aggressive and hostile and bitter and harsh to other people. And because of this, you'll notice your personal and professional relationships blossom, that they're conducted with ease. Because when you're aggressive and hostile and bitter with people and you're putting that out, that's just all going to come back to you. And your relationships will strain, and you'll have broken relationships over and over and over and over and over again. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you can have fulfilling, satisfying, and sustaining relationships that sustain long term. But in the unenlightened state, you won't know how to do that because the mind lacks wisdom. And with those pollutions in the mind, you'll struggle in certain relationships. So these are some of the qualities that you experience and some of the advantages of having attained the enlightened mental state. The teachings that you need in order to get to enlightenment are these core central teachings here. There's other teachings that you need as well, but these are the core central teachings. The 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the 8-fold path, the 5 precepts. I'm going to be teaching you all those things in this particular course. Then I'm not going to be teaching the Brahma-Viharas specifically in this particular course, but I do in others, and I have it in all the books and stuff like that, but I am going to reference them to be able to help you guys understand a little bit of those. We're going to be talking about the 10 fetters here in a moment in the 7 factors of enlightenment, and you're going to be getting started with meditation training. So this is like the core central teachings that you need, and this foundational course essentially has all of them built into it. And then various programs and retreats that I share, you can revisit these things and get deeper and deeper into them. And as I've mentioned, you learn them, you reflect on them to independently verify, and you practice. You need to examine the teachings, sink your teeth into the teachings. Okay? So this is the core central teachings that you need in order to get to enlightenment. Then in terms of the 10 fetters, these are 10 pollutions that the Buddha discovered. What a fetter is during ancient times, the way they would keep a prisoner trapped in a particular area and kind of keep them confined is they would put a fetter around their ankle. It's like a shackle and a chain and a ball, and this would keep somebody trapped in a certain area. This would keep a prisoner confined, because nowadays we have jail cells and things like this, but during those times they didn't have that. So they would put a fetter around a prisoner's leg, and then when they release the fetter, this is what's going to allow that person to go free. But the Buddha, when he described these fetters, he also described them as fetters, as pollutions, as taints, as defilements, that this is what's keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state. And you can see the truth for yourself that as you learn what these fetters are, and then you eradicate them and eliminate them from the mind, you'll see your mind becomes free. It becomes liberated, that you get this freedom from the strong feelings. So these fetters or these taints or these pollutions of mind, this is the underlying thing that's in the mind that is causing it to stay in the unenlightened state. But also, this is the underlying thing that the Buddha is teaching you to eradicate and eliminate. So when we talk about the Eightfold Path tomorrow, it's helping you to eliminate some of these fetters. And when you learn about the 5 precepts, it's helping you to eliminate these fetters. The Buddha doesn't necessarily call that out when he's sharing something like the 5 precepts with you. But if you understand the 10 fetters, you can actually trace each individual teaching that he's sharing with you to one of these fetters, that he's actually guiding you with certain tools and techniques of how to eliminate these individual fetters. So I'm going to introduce you to a couple of these so that you can understand a little bit about what they are. And then in other various courses and retreats, I go through and I spend a lot of time talking about each one. There's a retreat that I'm teaching this August where I spend an hour, hour and a half on each individual fetter. I explain to you what it is. I explain to you the symptoms of it. I explain to you how to eliminate it. And I explain to you how to know that you've actually eliminated it. So here, though, I'm just going to introduce you to them so that you'll understand what they are. There's something called personal existence view. We're going to be talking about this tomorrow when I talk about the 3 universal truths. This is where the mind has a misunderstanding and confusion or misperception that it thinks that this body is you or this mind is you. So the mind clings to the self-image or the self-identity. So for example, if you've ever been in a social situation and you spilt something on your clothing and you got embarrassed, this is because of your personal existence view. Your mind was clinging to this self-image, thinking that this is who you are, and now you're not being perceived in the world the way that you want to be perceived. And now when you're in that situation, you get embarrassed. Or if you've ever seen like a mole or a pimple and your mind's been shaken up by that, or if you've ever gotten like gray hair, or you started losing your hair, or you got a little bit of extra fat here or there, your mind's clinging to this body, wanting it to be one particular way permanently, thinking that this is who you are, wanting to be perceived in the world a certain way. And when the body wasn't, or when the mind wasn't experiencing that because the body was changing, the mind was uncomfortable with that. This is called personal existence view, where you're clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are. But also the mind clings to the self-identity in the mind itself, that you might have a certain culture, a certain ethnicity, a certain sexual orientation, maybe a national, maybe your nationality, maybe your job or occupation, clinging to a certain identity, thinking that this is who you are. And you can't control what other people say and what other people do. So if you cling to the identity that, I am Ecuadorian, right? Or I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am German, and you cling to this identity as who you are. When you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody is degrading and disparaging this people from where you come from, you'll get angry, you'll get frustrated. And it's not that person that's causing your anger. It's because your personal existence view. You're clinging to this identity of who you think you are as a person. Or if you've ever been in a relationship with like a boyfriend or girlfriend, or a husband or wife, and you identified with, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I'm a husband, I am a wife. When you guys separated, you didn't identify with, I am single. So you felt uncomfortable in that situation. And you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship over again, because the mind was uncomfortable in that status of being single. And now, because it identified with, I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, I'm a husband, I'm a wife, Now your mind might want to hurry up and get right back into another relationship, thinking that that was going to solve the problem. But the thing that was the problem is not that you didn't have a boyfriend or girlfriend. The problem is that you have this personal existence view identifying with I am a boyfriend and I am a girlfriend. And you'll feel uncomfortable when you're not that thing. Or say you were a police officer and you were working as this job and you identified with I am a police officer. Well, after maybe 10 or 20 years, you might get injured on the job, or you might lose your job, or you might retire. And now you might really struggle because now you're not a police officer anymore. And your mind is identifying with I am a police officer. And now when you're not fulfilling that role anymore, you can really struggle. So this is what personal existence view does, is it shakes up your mind because the mind is clinging to a certain self-image or a certain self-identity. And there's a solution to all of this. There's a way to fix all of this. So you'll need to learn about this and then gradually train your mind to eliminate it. Then there's something called doubt. This is where you have doubt about the teachings of the Buddha. And this is very common when somebody comes to the path to enlightenment, that they will have doubt about the teachings of the Buddha. So what you'll ultimately need to do is build confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, the community, your teacher, and your own ability to attain enlightenment. But you don't do this through blind belief or faith or anything like that. The way that you eliminate doubt is through investigating the teachings. When you investigate the teachings and you examine them, and then you reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them, you'll be able to see the truth, that these teachings are actually working to improve the condition of your mind. So the way you eliminate doubt is through investigation and examination of the teachings. And then there's something called wrong behavior in observances. What wrong behavior is that with a lack of wisdom of the natural law of karma, you will do unwise things through your intentions, your speech, your actions, your livelihood. You will do things in a way that is unwise, and then it'll cause harm to others, and this harm will come back to you. But by the time you eliminate this particular fetter, you will have eliminated your unwholesome moral conduct to the level that you see in the Eightfold Path. When you see me teach the Eightfold Path tomorrow, I'm going to be sharing with you the natural law of karma, of the harmful things that you can be doing through your intentions, your speech, your actions, your livelihood, and you'll be able to purify that through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, and you'll be able to get to the point where you eliminate wrong behavior. Because as long as you're putting out unwise moral conduct, it's causing harm to others, and this harm is going to come back to you. You're not going to be able to get to peace and joy in your life if you're constantly harming others through your intentions, your speech, your actions, and your livelihood. So the Buddha provides you this wisdom of the natural law of karma so that you can then purify your moral conduct and you can experience improved results so that you're not experiencing harshness and hostility and bitterness coming back to you. What wrong observances is, this is where an individual might think that rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship is producing some kind of benefit in your life. You might be having water sprinkled on you. You might be getting strings tied on your wrist. You might be doing little ceremonies and things like this, thinking that this is somehow going to benefit you. But if you understand the teachings of the Buddha deeply, you understand that it's a lack of wisdom, which is the number one problem, and that rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship isn't going to lead to improved wisdom in your mind. So whether you do these things or not, it's up to you. You know, it's your choice. It's your life. But what an enlightened being will have experienced is they will have been able to see the truth, even to get to the first stage of enlightenment. You will have seen the truth that the real problem is this unknowing of true reality, or this lack of wisdom, and that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship doesn't produce any kind of wisdom. So therefore, you will have purified your mind of any thinking that rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship would actually produce any kind of benefit. But maybe you go to a mosque or a temple or a synagogue or a church or something with your family, and maybe other people are doing certain rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and you know that these things don't lead to wisdom and they don't lead to enlightenment. That's up to you if you choose to do those things. It's not about what you do necessarily in this case. It's about how your mind thinks. It's about, do you understand that it's wisdom that you're working to get to, and rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship isn't going to produce that. So there's no amount of water that I can sprinkle on you that's going to make your life better. It might give you a refreshing, feel cool. You might get rid of a little bit of oil and dirt on your skin, but it's not going to produce any kind of wisdom for you. And that's what the Buddha taught, is to cultivate wisdom in the mind. So these others you're going to learn on your journey, like sensual desire and ill will. And then there's some here that I'll introduce to you in the higher fetters, like conceit. What conceit is arrogance and pride and judging, like measuring and comparing people, putting yourself above people and looking down on them, or putting yourself below people and looking up to them. If you're judging others and trying to measure and compare whether you're superior or inferior to others, this is the mind's ego. This is the conceit. And you're going to need to eradicate this in order to get to enlightenment. Because as long as you go around being boastful and prideful and arrogant, people will push you aside. People will reject you in your life because you're being arrogant and prideful and boastful, and people aren't interested in being around that. Where this is coming from is in our past lives. When we were in the animal realm, we needed conceit. That if we didn't have conceit, we wouldn't have survived. Because as a wolf, we needed to know who's the alpha male and who's the alpha female, because they're going to teach us how to hunt and they're going to teach us how to survive. As a herd of elephants, we needed to know who's the matriarch of our herd, because she's going to show us where the watering holes are. She's going to show us where the food is. She's going to show us the migration paths, different seasons. We're going to migrate from one place to the other. So if we didn't know who the matriarch of our elephant herd was, we would die. So in the animal world, we needed a pecking order. We needed to know who's above us and who's below us. It was crucial to our survival. But here in the human realm, we don't need that. But the challenge is that the mind, through countless animal existences, has been conditioned to have this conceit. So now in the human realm, with this conceit, it'll stand in your way of having harmonious relationships and living and residing with people peacefully. So you're going to need to dissolve any kind of measuring and comparing and judging yourself, putting yourself above or below others. And there are certain tools and techniques that the Buddha shares to be able to help you accomplish that. And then number 10, this is like the fetter of all fetters. This is the whole reason why all the other fetters actually exist. People will usually translate this to the word ignorance, but this word is kind of a derogatory word, and a Buddha wouldn't speak, and an enlightened being wouldn't speak in a derogatory and degrading way about people. So I tend to use the phrase unknowing of true reality, or misunderstanding, or confusion, or misperception. That's what this one is referring to, that the unenlightened mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. For example, it doesn't understand that it's causing its own anger, it's causing its own frustration. The unenlightened mind doesn't realize this. You will firmly believe that it's other people who are making you angry, or other people who are frustrating you, or other people who are annoying you. And because of this, you'll make a lot of unwise decisions around your moral conduct. When you experience anger and frustration, you might push people away, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. Or you'll try to push a situation away. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, and then people will choose to leave out of your life. Or you might choose to put your expectations on people, trying to control people to do things your way. And as long as you're doing this, where you're pushing people away, you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and you're putting your expectations on people, you're not going to be able to reside with all beings harmoniously. You'll find that life will be quite a bit of struggle for you. And where all this is coming from is the lack of wisdom, that the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. So the way that you transform this is through acquiring wisdom. And that's why I teach you to not believe any of the teachings, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You need to be able to get to wisdom so that you know the truth for yourself. So these are the lower fetters, and then also the higher fetters as well. Do you guys have any questions on anything that I've been sharing so far?
4 and 5.
Yes.
You didn't really speak about those. Is there a reason? Or the, 4 and 5.
You're going to learn these on Wednesday when I talk about craving, anger, and ignorance, because craving is the central desire. This is where the mind's longing, yearning through the sense bases, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. And the mind wants permanent comfort. It wants things to be pleasurable. So the mind chases and chases and chases. This is called central desire. And if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if you don't get what you want, You get painful feelings. And this is where your ill will can arise, your anger, your aggression, your hostility, your bitterness towards others. And this is all because of the pollution of the mind. So you're going to learn these really well on Wednesday. So that's why I don't really talk about them too much here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So let me see if we have anything online. Those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions there either. So once you're working on putting together the foundational teachings of the Eightfold Path and all the other connected teachings, your mind's going to start moving through the jhanas, the four preliminary phases that the mind experiences on its way to the first stage of enlightenment. Then you'll end up getting to the first stage of enlightenment, which here, the first stage of enlightenment is a stream enter. That's how we refer to it. And then the mind's going to move through these progressive stages where eventually your mind's going to get to the fourth stage of enlightenment, which we refer to as an arahant. This is where the mind is actually enlightened. This is where all those qualities that I was talking about will actually be experienced fully. But on your way to enlightenment, you'll be experiencing some of those qualities. So like even in the first stage of enlightenment, there's this significant reduction to the discontentedness that you're experiencing. It's just a fraction of what it once was when you were off the path to enlightenment. So getting to the first stage of enlightenment is pivotal because you're going to have this significant reduction to the discontentedness in your mind. And your mind from that point forward, it will get to enlightenment. Your mind's not going to regress from that point forward. Up to the first stage of enlightenment, if you gave up on your practice or you kind of became complacent, your mind would regress backwards. So any kind of concentration or focus or clarity that you started to experience, if you became complacent, your mind would regress backwards. But by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you won't experience that. This is why we refer to it as a stream enterer. Because just like the log enters a stream and is going to eventually get to the ocean, the same thing is true that somebody that gets to the first stage of enlightenment, they are going to get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time. So just like a log is going to eventually get to the ocean, a person who gets to the first stage of enlightenment, they're going to get to enlightenment. It's just a matter of time. So I'm going to explain to you these 4 stages and how you move through them. And then I'm going to talk to you and share with you what a Buddha is. A Buddha isn't a stage of enlightenment. It's a unique individual. A Buddha is an arahant. An arahant has fully purified their mind of the 10 fetters, but a Buddha has done that in a unique way. So let me share with you guys how to move through these 4 stages. When you eliminate the first 3 fetters, which is what you're working on at the very beginning, you're working on the core central teachings and putting those together. But when your mind starts experiencing the jhanas, this is kind of like the light bulb flickering and kind of giving you an indication that you're putting together the teachings really well. And this helps you to be able to know that you're putting together the core central teachings really well because you start experiencing the qualities of the jhanas. And as you do so, then you start focusing on these first 3 fetters and you start learning and understanding them in more detail. And you'll be introduced to these along the way, but you'll end up focusing on these much more closely as you're starting to experience the jhanas. And now, having eliminated the first 3 fetters, then your mind will be in this first stage of enlightenment. We call it stream enter. Then, having eliminated the first 3, then you ultimately start thinning out number 4 and 5, that they're still there, but you kind of thin them out. And here, again, you notice a reduction in the discontentedness. We refer to this as a once returner, because if you die in this stage of enlightenment, you will come back to the human realm one more time, and you will get to enlightenment at that point. And maybe perhaps you were a once returner in your last life. You don't necessarily know that right now. Maybe this is the life for you to get to enlightenment. So this is the second stage of enlightenment. Then there's the third stage of enlightenment. This is called non-returner. You've eliminated the 5 lower fetters. At this point in time, your mind's not experiencing very much discontentedness. It's about once every 3 months, maybe once every 6 months, you're experiencing a little bit of ickiness, kind of internally. The people around you probably don't even know that you're discontent. That it's very infrequent and is very insignificant when it actually occurs. It maybe lasts for 30 seconds to a minute, and you'll notice it, you'll understand it, and you'll be able to cut it off and let it go. But you need to be careful in this stage of enlightenment because you're experiencing such a minimal amount of discontentedness progress. It's so infrequent and it's so insignificant that you can become somewhat complacent here because you have some residual clinging that the mind has, and you need to eradicate that in order to fully get to the point where the mind is been purified entirely, and you have eliminated all the 10 fetters. And now the mind is actually enlightened. This is what we refer to as an enlightened being. Or during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was referred to as an arahant. This is someone who's purified their mind. This is where you're actually enlightened. If you die in this third stage of enlightenment, you'll be reborn into the heavenly realm, and then you will attain enlightenment from that realm. If you die as an arahant, the Buddha leaves this as an undeclared teaching, what happens next. Because the goal of this path isn't to do a whole bunch of things in this life and then hope something good happens when you die. The goal is to train your mind in this life and experience the benefits in this life. He leaves it as an undeclared teaching of what does or doesn't happen next. He just doesn't declare it. He specifically shares that it's an undeclared teaching of what happens next once you get to enlightenment and die. And I have my various reasons of why I think that the Buddha didn't teach this. And you guys are welcome to ask, and I'll share that with you. But what comes next for an enlightened being is an undeclared teaching. There may or may not even be anything next. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind's so peaceful and so joyful and so calm, you're not going to care if there's something next. It doesn't matter at that point because you're so peaceful in the present moment that what may or may not happen in the future, so what? It doesn't care. If there is something next, it's either as good as what you're experiencing now or better. And if there isn't something next, okay. So be it. It doesn't matter. You're so peaceful and joyful now, it doesn't really matter. So these are the 4 stages of enlightenment that your mind will move through. First, you put together the Eightfold Path and all the connected teachings that I shared as the core central teachings. From there, your mind's going to start experiencing the jhanas, those 4 preliminary phases. As you do, you start focusing on the 10 fetters and individually training your mind to eliminate those. And then as you're eliminating those, your mind's going to move through these 4 stages of enlightenment until the mind's ultimately enlightened. And this is where you can see that enlightenment is not instantaneous, right? And you'll learn that you can't just sit under a tree for 2 years and get to enlightenment. There's other things you need to do in order to train your mind to be able to get to enlightenment. You need to completely eradicate these pollutions. It's not possible to just sit in meditation and actually get to enlightenment. So this is the 4 stages of enlightenment. Now there's something called a Buddha, a fully, perfectly enlightened one. And I explained to you guys during the story of the Buddha, the first 3 criteria: that you get to enlightenment by yourself without the help of any teachers or any guides, that you dedicate the rest of your life to sharing those independently discovered teachings, and countless people get to enlightenment. And then you preserve your teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after your death. That's the first 3 criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. Another criteria is that an individual who's to become a Buddha, they're going to have a deep, profound memory. They're going to be remembering countless details about their current life and their past lives too. And this is how they're actually able to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides, because they accumulate wisdom over multiple lifetimes and they apply all that wisdom in their last life, where you have a limited capacity of space to store things in your mind. A person who's to become a Buddha, they don't have that. It's kind of like a hard drive that you might have like 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte of hard drive space. And in order to store new files, you've got to delete old files. So as you're experiencing new things in life, you're deleting old files in order to store new files. So if you think about the last 5 years or so, you pretty much remember the things that have happened in the last 5 years or so. But when you think back to your childhood, you kind of have spotty memories. And the reason why is because you've had to delete old files in order to store new files. And this is because you have a limited capacity. But an individual who's going to become a Buddha, even in the unenlightened state, they have a profound memory that they can remember countless details about their current life and their past lives too. And this wisdom comes together for them in their last life, being able to then apply that to be able to train their mind and then get to enlightenment. They also have the ability to quickly determine the condition of someone's mind by just spending time with them. And then they would use that to be able to help somebody to be able to get to enlightenment. So a Buddha can essentially read the mind of other people, and they can see the certain fetters that are in that person's mind. And then they're able to help them with teachings. But a Buddha doesn't provide teachings in an unsolicited manner. They only are going to provide teachings and guidance to somebody when they request it. But then a Buddha's, one of their powers essentially, is that they can observe the quality of somebody's mind, and then they can help them with teachings by sharing things that will help them to eradicate those certain pollutions. And a Buddha isn't interested in fame or fortune and the entire world knowing that they exist, because this power to be able to observe the quality of their mind, of their student's mind, is actually more profound when people don't know who an actual Buddha is. Because if everybody knew who a Buddha was, they would kind of be on their best behavior when they're around that person. And then that person wouldn't be able to use this special ability to be able to observe the quality of their student's mind and then be able to help them. So this is one of the qualities that a Buddha has, is they can observe the quality of students' minds, and then they can help them with certain teachings. And then lastly, one of the qualities that a Buddha has is that they're a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. That they don't teach one thing and then do something different. Whatever they're teaching, that's what they practice as well. So this is one of the ways that students of a Buddha would actually learn, is that they learn through the spoken words of a Buddha, but they also learn from observing the individual interact in the world. That if a Buddha is teaching about right speech, for example, they're going to be practicing right speech so that you can be able to see, and you can learn not only through the spoken words, but you can learn through their actions as well. Their bodily actions, their verbal actions, their mental actions. You'll be able to see how an enlightened being functions in the world. And their students can learn just as much, if not more, through their teacher's actions as they can through their spoken words. So a Buddha is going to be a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. So these are some of the qualities of a Buddha. And it's very rare for the world to have a Buddha in the world. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So you can get to enlightenment and you'll be enlightened, but you won't be a Buddha at that point. You'll be an arahant. You'll be an enlightened being. You'll be in the fourth stage of enlightenment. And that'll be plenty for you. You'll be plenty satisfied in that mental state. But you won't be a Buddha at that point, because you will need teachers. You need guides. You don't have these various qualities that make a Buddha a Buddha. Okay? So any questions here so far and anything that I'm sharing? Yeah, you have a question? Take your time. No rush. You forgot it? We can come back if you think about it. Okay. Yeah, so let me go on. So I just have a couple. Oh, Junko. Go ahead, ma'am. You'll need to unmute yourself so that we can hear you here at the temple and they can hear you on the live stream.
Oh, sorry, I muted. So I have a couple of questions, and the first one is today we learned enlightenment about enlightenment, and then so I wonder, so Buddha found or got enlightenment. So this is for helping the people. So because so when the first time, so he went outside from palace, he found a lot of difference from inside the palace. And so I think you mentioned, so Buddha was interested in helping people. So and then also the prophet said, so to Buddha's dad, so Buddha going to be a really so successful or famous person, but not like a king. So in different way. So I'm not sure. So Buddha himself knew about that or not, but so he was. I wonder he was interested in helping people, right? It's a really weird question, sorry.
Yes, that was his motivation to get to enlightenment, is that his own mind was discontent. And what happens to an individual who's going to become a Buddha is they'll have kind of a moment in time where it's almost like a light switch switches, that he goes from just being the prince and he goes out and sees these 4 observations and his mind is radically shaken up. And now the only thing that he can do is get to enlightenment in order to solve his own problem with his own mind. And when he saw that the kingdom was full of all this misery and despair, it's like a light switch going off in your mind, and his mind kind of is on a downward spiral, and he's got to figure out how to solve this. And the only way to do that is to figure it out himself, because when he went to these 2 teachers, they weren't able to help him. So he needed to go off and do it by himself. And his motivation was to help himself, of course, but also to help others, that he could then share the teachings to be able to help them escape their misery and despair.
Thank you. And then, so the next question was, it's like, so he intended to seek the enlightenment. So I wondered that he was seeking what's the way to help the people. So I wonder he ended up finding the enlightenment. So this is just a kind of only way to help the people. So it's like not coincidentally, but when while he was meditating day and day and every day, and then some over years, so he obtained the enlightenment, right?
Yes. So when a individual who is going to become a Buddha sees the condition of the world and how difficult and the struggles that people are experiencing, what he's trying to do is solve this within his own mind, so that then he can help others to be able to solve it as well. And it takes multiple years to be able to do that. So it's not just like an instantaneous thing. So this is where you need to be able to understand that this path to enlightenment, it's a multi-year journey that you're gradually training your mind and gradually experiencing progress.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And then, so last question is, about reborn. So now, so I'm living as a human being, and I wonder, so if it's kind of, is there such a possibility to go to the other realm, like animal realm? Or so if I go there, and then if I go there, so maybe is there no chance to get enlightenment? So it's really weird to kind of to consider about after I'm passing this life, but just I'm curious. So if it's such a such an option to go to the other realm.
The short answer to your question is yes, you can be reborn into the lower realms and also into the heavenly realm, or back into the human realm as well. These are all possibilities. But if you're training your mind on the path to enlightenment, or you ultimately get to enlightenment, this isn't a potential. Once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, from that point forward, you will never be reborn into the lower realms again. So the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm. So that's one of the other reasons why getting to the first stage of enlightenment is so pivotal, is not only that your mind won't regress, but you won't be reborn into those lower realms either. But up until that point, there's the potential that the mind could be experiencing at death, the potential rebirth in a future life into any of these 5 realms.
Okay, I see. Sorry. So another question come up to me. So for example, animal realm. So the kind of dogs and then whales. So we hear a lot of kind of humane story. So about them. So I wonder, even animal could get enlightenment, or no option.
Animals in that existence aren't able to get to enlightenment. They can cultivate their mind to a certain degree to experience an improved rebirth, meaning improved rebirth within the animal realm, or even moving out of the animal realm into like a human existence or a heavenly existence. This is all possibilities. Each one of these realms, beings can be reborn from any one of the 5 realms into one of the 5 realms. There's no kind of like hierarchy or thing like that, but in the animal realm, they can't cultivate their mind enough to get to enlightenment from that existence. They're going to need to be reborn into either a human or heavenly existence. Those are the only 2 realms where you can actually attain enlightenment. And here in the human realm, it's an ideal existence because we experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. So we tend to have built-in motivation in this existence to be able to get to enlightenment. And we have the ability to cultivate our mind in the human realm in a way that an animal doesn't have the ability to do. So any animal is going to need to ultimately be reborn into another existence to be able to get to enlightenment. And every single one of us have had countless rebirths in those various realms that you may or may not remember right now. But as your mind awakens more and more and you get this pollution out of your mind, you might actually end up observing some of these past lives. But you can see some of the qualities of an animal in a human being. And that's why some people refer to humans as animals, but we're not actually animals. We're a completely different existence. We're in the human realm. But because the mind's been conditioned as an animal for so many animal existences, when the consciousness comes into a human body, it can function very much like an animal because it's the consciousness functioning like an animal. But we are in a different existence than we were in the in the animal realm. So those animals need to be reborn into a improved existence in order to get to enlightenment, either in the human realm or the heavenly realm.
Thank you so much, David. So it's really helpful for me to understand the Buddha's mind and also other stuff as well. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Pleased to help you. Okay. Oh, yes, sir. You thought of your question?
Actually, it was all. I think you already said it, but I'm not sure if I really understood completely. That was my question. To stop, you have to be an arahant to stop rebirth, the cycle of rebirth, right? And you said, if you are, I think you said, but I'm not sure if I understand. So if you become an arahant, then rebirth is stopped, or is it you still could become a human again, or you go to the heaven realm? Or?
Once the mind's enlightened as an arahant, so the mind's been completely purified, there's not going to be rebirth in the cycle of rebirth. But this is different than no existence at all. Sometimes you'll hear people say that once you get to enlightenment, you're extinct and you'll never exist anywhere ever again. This is not what the Buddha taught. Anybody that talks about what happens once you get to enlightenment and after, this isn't a teaching of the Buddha, because the Buddha left it as an undeclared teaching. You can see it in his own words where he says, remember, monks, what did I teach? I taught this. And he points to the Four Noble Truths. And he says, remember, monks, what I did not teach. I did not teach this. And one of the things that he didn't teach is what happens to you after you die as an enlightened being. But he does share that you're not reborn anywhere in terms of the cycle of rebirth. But he doesn't say whether you exist or whether you don't exist. He just leaves it as an undeclared teaching. And by that point, your mind's so peaceful and joyful, it doesn't matter. Yeah. All right. Great questions, guys and girls. When I say guys, I mean both genders. Right? All right. So the last thing that I'll share with you guys on this is just how to understand when your mind isn't enlightened. This is a good way to understand what enlightenment is to understand what enlightenment isn't. Okay. If your mind is experiencing discontent feelings, meaning conditioned feelings, like pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant, that are arising, changing, and fading away, you know that your mind is unenlightened. As I mentioned, an enlightened being is going to experience unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy. But this conditional feelings, this is what an unenlightened being experiences. Essentially, the mind goes up and down and up and down and up and down with periods of calm and peace here and there, but it's only a matter of time before you become agitated or annoyed about something or frustrated about something, right? In the enlightened mental state, you won't be experiencing any of these conditional feelings. If you notice that you have craving or desire to go out and tell people that you're enlightened, you're not yet enlightened. So that's one of the best ways to know someone is not enlightened, is that they will tell you that they are. So if people come up to you and be like, hey, by the way, I'm enlightened. Look at me. Aren't I so great? Admire me. I have a desire for you to admire me. This is a craving, desire, attachment. This is the ego. So if you have a desire for other people to know you're enlightened, then you're not yet enlightened. And enlightened being is going to be humble. Their mind's so peaceful and joyful, they don't need to go around and tell people that they're enlightened. If you're so enlightened, go be enlightened. Why do you got to come around here and tell us about it? What are you looking for? You're looking for admiration? You're looking for, some kind of appreciation or gratitude, or you're looking for us to bow down to you? What do you want from us that you're coming to tell us that you're enlightened? So by the time you get to enlightenment, you're not going to have a desire to go around and tell people that you're actually enlightened. If you notice that there's complacency in the mind, like a lack of motivation or initiative or enthusiasm or a willingness to do something, then you know that you're not enlightened. Because an enlightened being is going to have enthusiasm. They're going to have energy. They're going to have motivation, ambition. They're going to have vigor in the mind. They're just not chasing after things, right? They're also not complacent either. They're not living on both sides. They're in the middle. So if you notice that you have complacency where you feel dull and you feel lethargic and you just don't want to go out and do anything, this is the mind being unenlightened because of those pollutions in the mind. So this is how you can know that the mind is unenlightened. Okay? So I'm going to pause here. I just share this with you guys at the end here just to kind of sum things up about what enlightenment isn't, that you'll know that your mind isn't enlightened. And there's other things we could talk about here too, right? If somebody is impolite, unkind, unfriendly, disrespectful, if somebody's arrogant and egotistical, if you see anger and frustration, agitation, these are all indications that the mind isn't enlightened. An enlightened being is going to have focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory. They're going to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful with everybody around them. You'll see all those qualities that I mentioned there and others as well. Okay? So let me just make one more round here, see if there's any questions anywhere, either on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. And if I see any questions here, I'll answer those for you guys. I don't see any questions. I don't see any in Zoom either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end class here for our lunch break. It's basically 10 minutes to 12. We can take a full hour and 40 minutes for lunch. And when we come back at 1:30, what I'm going to do is share with you guys Buddhist chanting. We're going to be doing meditation together in the afternoon, and I'm going to be teaching you Buddhist chanting so you can learn about these chants and what they are, and we'll practice them together, and we'll actually do meditation together. So during this course, you'll get used to meditating in the morning and in the afternoon, and this will really have an impact to your mind over the next 5 days. So enjoy your lunch, enjoy whatever food you have. If you'd like to hang out here, you can. I'm going to leave the air conditioning on. You can even come back here and take a nap. You might see me doing that at some point from time to time during the week, but make yourself comfortable. Feel free to get whatever you need, and feel free to use this space as well. And I'm going to start teaching again at 1:30. Okay? So we'll see you guys potentially after lunch. All right. You're welcome. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.